stories, our own stories, are medicine. And that's why I love doing things like this. I think we owe it to each other and to our ancestors and to our kids to share our stories and to heal.
Welcome to Lived In by Zoe Therapy Services. I'm your host, Micah Faye, and I'm excited to share with you a community of experts who specialize in helping you feel fantastic. That's what Lived In aims to be, an online hub for DIY wellness led by the experts and curated by folks who care. In this wellness series, I interview Richmond community leaders, vendors, and healers to empower you with a toolkit, one filled with healthy practices to make every day just a little bit better. So welcome to Lived In, your online comfy couch surrounded by friends and supported by experts. Come on in. We're excited to have you. Hey folks, and welcome back to Lived In. I am your host, Micah Faye, and today we have with us the lovely Rachel Douglas, who is the Executive Director of the Innerwork Center in Richmond, Virginia. Okay, so I know what it means to be an ED.
Yeah.
What I really don't know what it is the Innerwork Center. So can you please explain to me what y'all do?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would love to.
Yes.
So I'll explain to you what we do, and then I'll tell you a little bit about my perspective of just the term inner work.
Okay, great.
So we are a small nonprofit. We're just in the museum district.
Mm-hmm.
Our programs are a catalyst for well-being. That's how we describe them. They're a catalyst for well-being by inspiring curiosity, by cultivating mindfulness, and through awakening the spirit.
Okay.
So we used to be called Chrysalis, and we were called Chrysalis for a really long time. We were all volunteer run, and it was this perfect name that described this journey, this transformation. That's not always pretty, it's you melt down, you turn into goo, and then you, come out on the, next leg of your journey as a butterfly. And it was really beautiful for who we are then, but a lot of people don't know what a chrysalis is.
Interesting.
Or how it works, or how to spell it, or even pronounce it. So it wasn't really working for us. Yeah. And when thinking about how we wanted to convey ourselves, we really wanted to share that this work that you do through our programs, it's not always easy. Going inside and discovering who you are, it's actually hard work.
Yeah.
You do it because there's a huge benefit. I mean, it's hard work staying sort of asleep too. You do it because there's amazing benefits to waking up to your life, to living a meaningful life. But we really wanted to convey that inner work is this deep introspection that gives you clarity about what matters most in life to you, right? Which is going to be different from what it means to me or Velma Louise or anybody else.
I don't think much of anything is going on in her inner work, to be truthful, but that is okay.
She seems really mindful.
She's, you know what? In the way that she sleeps really well, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we changed from Chrysalis to Innerwork, and I love that because it makes us more accessible, right?
Yes.
So my students probably don't know what a chrysalis is, but I think they can put together the two word parts, inner and work, and understand what's going to go on for them, right?
Yeah.
So I think the thing, maybe I am too dense to understand from the website, is are y'all a space or are you a facilitation? Or maybe both. I can't quite.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and yes.
Okay.
So, yes, it's okay to be confused right now.
Yeah.
Because of COVID.
Yeah.
We've gone completely online.
Yeah.
But yes, we are a space.
You're a space. Okay.
So we have a, program gathering space right in the middle of the museum district. We're on Roseneath and Grove.
Wow.
And it's beautiful. So yes, we offer programs.
Okay.
And usually you come in person, or pre-pandemic, nearly everything was in person.
Right.
And then, of course, we pivoted to online, and then nearly everything was on Zoom. And now we're just exploring, what feels comfortable to people. Are you ready to go back in person? What kind of mitigation strategies do we have in place? So we're in that in-between time, although we will keep a lot of the online stuff because it actually was beautiful. There was, it was very sort of intimate experience in a lot of ways. You know, when we would be Zooming for a keynote or whatever, I would see like hundreds of my community members, but like in their house where I had never been. And I could see like who's with their partner and like what art do they have on the wall and, you know, what's important to them. And it was actually really lovely. And speaking of accessibility, like it made it really accessible. There was no worrying about parking. There was no, do I have toll money? There was no like building in an hour on both ends for time or whatever. There's just show up, do what you can, and then bow out.
Yeah.
So I was actually able to do a lot more classes than I usually am able to do because I'm working from home. I did my classes from home. Anyway, so we also go out into the community. And so to answer your third question, so we have a focus, our focus group are on the, we focus our outreach on the helpers. So teachers, parents, and healthcare providers, which we all three went really hard on during the pandemic because those were three groups that were really impacted by the pandemic and who all have to make a lot of quick choices. And, you know, what mindfulness does is it gives you that space between a stimulus and your response. And that makes you more skillful as a teacher, as a healthcare provider, as a parent. You know, we're all dealing with these like quick responses. And if we can get that space, we can respond in a way that builds growth and does the least amount of harm rather than just from our, you know, instinct or just our reacting, which is often kind of unskillful and can be really hurtful.
Two of my favorite things about teachers and decisions are, one, did you know that a teacher makes more decisions in one class period than a neurosurgeon does during surgery? And it's a real thing.
That's amazing. I believe it.
And two, there's like a saying that I was told my first year of teaching that was really useful to me. It was just teaching is making 1,000 decisions a minute while someone is screaming your name. And nothing has ever been more true than that. It's just like, let's do this! While I'm like deciding on something that could harm or hurt a child's emotional well-being.
Yes.
Not to mention their academic well-being. So I 1,000% can understand why we need that space to make these decisions, right? Do y'all work with like counties? Because we should come work with Enrico.
We actually try. We're in Richmond, Chesterfield, Goochland, Hanover, Hopewell, and we just got a grant to start working with Henrico. And so we have a class going this summer with a group of teachers and administrators from Henrico. And the reason we did both is because we really want the buy-in from the administrators. Mm-hmm. So if they can see firsthand, I mean, we have all the data in the world to share, but if they can see firsthand the way that it helps the teacher come to terms with their own triggers and have awareness around those triggers and then be more skillful in the classroom, then they'll divert some funds to allow us to reach all of their teachers, which is our hope. Yeah. When we first started this work with teachers, in my mind, I was conceptualizing it all about the students, right? Like we need to give students role models of people who demonstrate an ability to relate to their stress, that can demonstrate resilience, that can, you know, demonstrate doing hard things. And then I quickly realized that actually the teachers need it and deserve it too, that the teachers were being thrown a million things on top of actually teaching the content.
Which is the only thing we get paid for.
So we realized that the teachers were acting out too. Like the teachers were triggered and by things that the students would say, and they would send them out of the classroom for, punishment instead of being able to work with them directly in the classroom. And then we know what happens when students start getting sent down the hall to the principal's office and that whole pipeline that triggers. Right. I think our work with teachers is some of the most important work that I've ever done personally in my career.
So then let's talk about your career.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you know what? First, let's clarify. So what I'm hearing is that you are a physical space. That you're also facilitators of learning. Additionally, you are community outreach partners.
Yes.
So y'all are all of those things.
Yes.
Okay. And you offer a variety of courses that center around cultivating mindfulness, activating the spirit, and creating
inspiring curiosity.
Yeah. So all kinds of classes. Like I was on your website, I noticed like a journaling class or something. I'm a big journaler, so that was interesting to me. But there was also something I think about food. Like it just seemed like there were all sorts of options, right? And that and again, to clarify, not just for teachers and healthcare workers, it's for anyone in the Richmond general area?
Adults.
Adults, okay.
Yeah,
a good clarification.
We are tiptoeing into the teen market right now, but adults who just self-select to come to our space because they want to live a life that feels more meaningful.
Okay.
Journaling is a huge part of that.
Sure.
A huge part of getting to know who you actually are versus who you were told to be or what you think you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
So really getting to your root, getting closer to you.
Wow. Okay, so did I get all of that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we do those classes and they change all the time.
Yeah.
And then we also have drop-ins that are free, we call them practice groups. And I'll explain that just a bit because the transformation is in the practice. So you could drop in and find out, so being in nature is a tool that I can add to my toolbox that I hadn't considered before.
Yeah.
But until you start doing it regularly, you're not going to necessarily see how it changes your life. Yeah. So another way of saying that is that these practices are dose dependent.
Interesting. Yeah.
The more you do them, the more you'll see the difference it makes in your life.
Okay. So then tell me about your work and how, because I sense from talking to you that you live a very meaningful and I almost get the sense of like a sacred life. So tell me about it.
Yeah.
How did we get here?
It's sacred, it's perfect, it's all of the things.
Yeah.
So my personal journey?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you woke up when you were like 6 and you were like, I'm going to run the Innerwork Center.
No.
I don't think that was you.
That was not me. So let's see where we want to start with this story. So before I worked at the Innerwork Center, I ran this program called Nonprofit Learning Point, which is a program of VCU and their Division of Community Engagement and the Community Foundation. So I was doing that program and putting together the curriculum for what do nonprofit professionals need in their toolbox. And I kept reading about mindfulness and that big companies like Google and Aetna were studying the effects of mindfulness on the bottom line. I thought, okay, well, if this is a new trend in business and nonprofits are essentially businesses and our clients deserve us to run like businesses,
they do, yeah.
we could apply mindfulness and look at it from our double bottom line, right? Like we're meeting our mission and our, and our budgets.
Right.
So I asked around, is there any mindfulness in Richmond? I really had no clue about anything about the concept. Yeah. And one of my mentors said, oh yeah, you should check out the Davidsons. He was a banker. She was a psychologist. You'll love them. And I'll share the reason for that specific introduction of them is because I come from a family of scientists.
Oh, wow.
Going way back, scientists, my siblings, my parents, my cousins, So I have a deep appreciation for science. I also know that there are things that science can't explain. And that doesn't mean they're not real. But this is back to pre-Innerwork Center. And I was like, okay, I needed that grounding. I needed that credibility.
Yeah.
So I went to check them out. They were offering an intro to mindfulness. And it was 3 hours. Cool. And it was really the first time that anyone had connected the mind and the body for me. And I know that seems really weird because I was in my 30s at that point. And yet I had never considered my body anything other than something to carry my brain around.
Yeah.
That's where the value is, not in this. And so it was really mind-blowing for me to move my thoughts down from my brain and into my body. Yeah. And, I think with my gut. And it gave me that sort of validity that I needed, that it was all connected, right? I needed to hear that. I had not heard that message before. So I was like, well, this is amazing. What is this place? It was Chrysalis at the time. And it was in this basement retail space where the old U-Crops used to be in Carytown. Mm-hmm. No signage, no nothing. But I went back to my desk and Googled them. And they were bringing this astrophysicist. His name is Jim Gates. He later went on to be an advisor to Obama. He was really amazing. And he talked about sort of the string theory and this concept of science not being able to explain anything yet. Like, let it catch up. But like, don't lose what we were talking about then was like faith, which could mean so many other things and really had nothing to do with religion, which really spoke to me.
Yeah.
So I said to my wife, we need to become a member of this organization and go to this keynote. It looks amazing. Yeah. And then the next day I saw that they were hiring for an executive director. And there was transitions within Nonprofit Learning Points. So I kind of had my eyes open anyway and asked my mentor and she said, oh my gosh, yes, you should totally apply. And that was it. I got my resume in, I got an interview. It was an absolute love affair with the people that interviewed me. I said, I know nothing about spirituality. I'm not a spiritual person. I mean, I was raised Jewish and I culturally am Jewish, but like, I don't believe in God or anything like that. And they were like, that's okay.
Don't need you for this.
Nope. Yep. They were like, well, how would you define your spirituality? And I said, I don't know, just like be a good person in the world. And they said, yeah.
Works for us.
It's basically it.
Same here, lived it.
So that was that's how I sort of got into this role, is that I had a lot of nonprofit management and leadership understanding that I was raring to put to work for a nonprofit. And they never had an executive director. They only had like very new staff and they wanted to open up to be a wide-reaching, high-impact nonprofit organization. So we were like a really good fit for each other. Yeah. And I have grown tremendously, and the Innerwork Center has grown tremendously. So it's working. Yeah.
Wow. That's really cool.
So I love that. That's one aspect of my story.
I'm curious, and if you don't want to answer this, you don't have to. I think my experience with nonprofits has been super toxic. Like, they are breeding grounds for poisonous people, it feels like to me. And I became one of those poisonous people in the nonprofit realm. Now, this could be specific to Christian evangelical nonprofits. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones I worked in, right? So I don't know if it definitely could be that. But I'm curious, how do y'all manage, since you are the top dog? Yeah. How do you manage to be well in the like high stakes, high stress, rush of what it is truthfully to work for a nonprofit?
It's a great question. And I do think that it's an epidemic in the nonprofit sector. I also think it's just a byproduct of capitalism.
Amen.
That this hustle culture, and oftentimes nonprofits are really doing the same stuff as other, businesses. They're just doing it with less resources. So, yes, I've seen the gamut. I've seen some really healthy nonprofits in that role, at Nonprofit Learning Point. So I had that sort of opportunity to pick and choose sort of the things that I liked about the nonprofits that I thought were run really well. And as the first executive director, I really had limitless opportunity, with the only obstacle being to get the support of my board, who were an amazing, I really lucked out to this board that I was hired into, just amazing, lovely, self-actualized, kind people who were open to my expertise and what I had to bring to the table, which just felt so good to be trusted. So we did a lot of things right off the bat. One was a free time off policy, understanding that we hire adults and we treat them like adults. And if we let you shine, then you will shine. And so there's little oversight. Just do your job really well, and you take off the time that you need to take off, and you work the time that you need to work. So the pitfall with that is that sometimes people don't take enough time off.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think for so many of us that are drawn to nonprofit work, it's because we care a lot and we are workhorses in a way, and then we have been conditioned within this capitalist system to believe that our worth comes from that hustle, like you said.
Yes.
So how do you combat that?
Yeah. So one, there's no emergencies in spiritual development.
Okay.
There's just not. And I would take that philosophy to anywhere, because I have been in nonprofits where there were emergencies and they did feel like emergencies, but there has to at some time be a realization that they're never going to stop coming down the pipeline. They're never, ever going to stop unless we make some huge change, which us at individual nonprofits just cannot do.
Yeah.
So there has to be this realization that you do enough, not too much and not too little, but you do enough, and that you value that work that you are doing enough to take care of yourself, to be able to show up the next day. So you are not going to save the world. And that is a surprise to some people.
Yeah.
But it's like that quote, like, together we do small things, and that does change the world. And I absolutely believe that none of us are responsible for all of it, but we also cannot turn our backs on it.
Yeah.
So we do what we can do and know that we are enough, we do enough, we have enough. And oftentimes it's that mindset. It's not even the organization setting the toxic culture. It's us being like, but without me, that person's going to suffer.
Ooh.
And there's always a person behind that person.
Yeah.
So you have to stop somewhere.
Yeah.
And then you can maybe be in it for the long haul, which is the hope, which is my hope for my work.
In Judaism, there's a word for that, tikkun olam.
Yep. Yeah.
We're all little
the
puzzle
world.
pieces that fit together, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's my root.
Repairing
the world. That's my root.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for helping me with that one. Okay. So you teach classes, it sounds like.
I am just now starting to move from more of an administrative ED role into tiptoeing into the classroom.
So what's that? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I did a training called KORU. It's for emerging adults is the target market. And I love it. I love that group, which we were talking earlier about was probably a surprise to nobody else but me.
Really?
I worked at VCU for 15 years before I came over, and I loved it. I love VCU. I feel like the campus is just electric. And so I am really drawn to that age group and that sort of stage in life. Yeah. So these are mindfulness tools for young adults, but
anyone can benefit.
Anyone can be. It really is the same tools I learned taking mindfulness-based stress reduction, taking mindful self-compassion, taking compassion cultivation training. There are all these different angles on this very singular but dynamic topic of mindfulness.
Right. So you are doing the one class, then it is called What for Who, so we can plug it for you?
Yeah, so I'm not offering any classes to the public.
Oh, I see.
Now. So right now the class that I'm currently teaching is for teachers who are just coming out of their residency program.
Oh, wow. RTR.
Yes, RTR.
Okay, another way we could know each other. Awesome.
But I just started, so I love it. But yeah, I'm open to doing more classes, but they would just be with... they wouldn't be open through the Innerwork Center.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Working towards my certification.
That's so great.
Yeah. I love it.
That's wonderful. So maybe I'm asking too many questions about teachers, but oh well.
That's okay.
How many teachers or mental health professionals, wellness professionals are on your team then? How do you make all this happen?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. So our team actually is just 4, but it's really an administrative team. Okay. We have a faculty, and our faculty is maybe 25 to 30, maybe more, of people who have content expertise in, the classes that you see in this brochure.
Right.
So we pull from the community for their expertise.
Wow.
And we support them through professional and leadership development through our lens of Innerwork.
Right.
We support them through like a trauma-informed professional development. We support them through DEI work. We support them through facilitation skills.
Yeah.
So in that way, I hope that it's a reciprocal relationship and we help them grow.
Yeah. I'm curious about, because, before cameras were rolling, we were talking about your babies and your wife.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, how has this work changed you as a wife? But then also I want to, because I know already it's affected your parenting in a big way.
Yeah.
So I want to know about that too. But let's first talk about your like spousal relationship.
Yeah.
How is this version of Rachel different than like maybe a 10-year ago Rachel?
Yeah. There's a lot of ways I can talk about, but I guess there's one that I'll share with you today, just in the interest of our hour-long conversation.
Okay.
and that is that it's rarely personal. Yeah. Everything is rarely personal. So if Aaron is in a bad mood, it doesn't usually have anything to do with me. But yeah, it's rarely personal when Aaron says something that sort of rubs me the wrong way, and 10 years ago, 7 years ago, I would have been like, oh, that's so rude. I think right now it's more like, okay, maybe I'll reflect that back to her so she maybe wasn't aware of the way that she looked when she's saying, or maybe I just let it go and just walk away and just know it's not everything is about me. Yeah. Even with my kids, they can be, kids can be cruel. And just this morning they were choosing Aaron over me. And I think 7 years ago, that would have, I can tell you, actually, it devastated me with my firstborn. And with my second, I'm like, ouch. But I can move on and know that I am a good mom. I'm a fun mom. They like me, I can remind myself that it's not personal, that they are their own human beings. They've only been in this world for 8 and 4 years.
Yeah.
They have a lot to figure out. So let me not be that person that takes everything personally and gets offended by it. I mean, at this point, I feel like with Aaron, so to be direct with your question, and with my kids, like I have that spaciousness to choose my response now, whereas I don't feel like I had that spaciousness before. I would be offended and I would react with big feeling. I mean, I've always my whole life had big feelings. So I'd react with my big feelings. And now I think I take things in and I apply my wisdom. And then, I can come back with a little more equanimity.
Yeah. Big feelings, I think, must be like a buzzword right now because it's like it's been in my trainings as well. But I use it with my kids now because every day from day one, and I tell them this on day one, hi, I'm Miss Thomas. I'm a white, straight, cis lady. And every day we're going to talk about race, class, and gender. Race, class, and gender, race, class, and gender. And we do every day. And so sometimes I'll begin by saying, so we're going to have big feelings today, and all big feelings are allowed. And if you want to feel your big feelings out loud, you can. If you want to feel your big feelings inside, you can. If you want to leave and not feel big feelings, also acceptable. But if you stay, there will be big feelings. Yes. And those are allowed in this space today with me, But I think explaining them as big feelings has changed. Because my kids will be like, well, I don't cry. I ain't weak. And it's like, I didn't say that. I said, you might have a big feeling today. So that's allowed.
But I mean, I think about, I don't know if you were born with parents that like allowed you to have big feelings, or if you had a healing journey that allowed you to understand that your big feelings were allowed. But that is so beautiful and rare.
Important. Yeah.
And something that as a parent, I also have to sort of continuously remind myself, like my discomfort for their big feelings is just that. Yeah. It's just my discomfort. Yeah. And they can feel whatever they want to feel. And so sometimes I'll say, Shia, my youngest, he'll say, I am sad. Oh. And sad is his is his umbrella for every feeling. He's like, if he's mad, he's sad. If he's disappointed, he's sad. Sad is just his umbrella feeling. I'm like, let's just sit here and be sad. Like, I get it. Yeah. But I really have to stop and be like, let him be sad. Yeah. Just let him be sad. Doesn't matter that you're uncomfortable that he's sad, and don't fix it.
Right.
Just let him be sad.
Yeah.
And like, I'm so excited to see what that does for him as a person, and like how he's able to grow in ways that I actually had to heal from.
Right. So what does it look like to be a mindful parent then? Practically, or actually it might be interesting, do you have like a philosophy that you and your wife repeat over and over again to remind yourselves of? Like, do you have rhythms in your household that you keep to? What does that look like?
Yeah. So Erin buys into all of the mindfulness stuff, even though her practice looks very different than mine. Like, she's very nature oriented. So her practice is going outside in the creek and literally scooping the muck out of the creek and putting it on the shore.
Wow.
So anything sort of explicit about mindfulness in the house comes from me.
Okay.
But she definitely supports it and I think appreciates it. And we kind of joke about, I was just joking with my daughter who's nervous about going to camp after a year of being at home. Isn't it going to be great that you can go and talk to other kids who are interested in things like you are, like Pokemon, where mommy's just not like, oh, that's great. I'm happy that you're happy. Now let's talk about mindfulness. Won't it be great to talk to other people about things other than mindfulness?
Yeah.
She's like, oh, yeah.
But she's that mindfulness kid. She is.
She is. Yep. And I see her when she needs space, she will go and put herself like in a corner in an open space or whatever, and she'll just look at the wall, and I know she's doing her stuff.
Aww.
And nobody needs to know, but she's just silently doing her stuff so that she can get back into whatever it is that she knows how to take space for herself.
That's wonderful.
And she knows that she is enough. And that, I think, that's like, if that's all she walks away with, that's fine with me.
Yeah.
Just know that you're enough. But yeah, I do, we do meditations at night before we go to bed. And with my son, he was born 2 months early, so we started in the NICU doing loving kindness, just singing loving kindness. And that would help the hours go by. It was loving kindness to like the people we know, and then like all the hospital workers and the vendors on the streets and the people who made the machines that are in the room. There's like no end.
Just who you can sing loving kindness to?
Yes.
How do you sing loving kindness? What is that?
Oh gosh, on camera. So, yeah. Okay. So we sing. Well, we always start with us.
Okay.
So, may we be happy, may we be well, may we feel loved and grow from the ground of loving kindness.
Oh.
And then we would say mama, and we would say, we would say, may Micah be happy, may they be well, may they feel loved and grow from the ground of loving kindness. And then we would go, all around.
All around. Okay, that's adorable. Where did we get that song from? We made it up?
Yeah.
Love
we
that.
made it up. Well, actually, yeah. So one of my my mindfulness teachers said, you can sing that. And it was like it's something that she said in passing.
Yeah, no.
But it was one of those things that just stuck in my head. And as soon as I held my baby, I was like, just sort of came out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I went to school for musical theater, and I explain the world to me in song. Like, yeah, I do. When I left Christianity and I left the church, I didn't know what to do with my inner monologue that used to be prayer. Yeah. I wasn't sure how to hold that anymore. And so I wrote myself a song for when I feel like the need to pray. And I sing that song. Even I'm like 5 years out, but like I still sing that song sometimes when my urge is like, I don't really know what to do with this. I'm going to sing my song to myself. Yeah.
I think that's really skillful.
Is it?
I mean, it's mindfulness in a way that is relevant to your life. Yeah.
Oh, I guess
for
so.
You. I mean, the best practice is the one that works for you. So.
Ooh, that's a good saying.
Yeah.
That's a really good one.
Thank you.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, no, I just think it's funny. You're doing something that musical theater people do all the time, which is just sing to ourselves when we feel any sort of anything ever.
Yeah.
That's why we burst into song at random,
I love that.
So, beyond, I guess, I'm curious about what conflict looks like in your house, because there has to be some. You have a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
How do you do it? How do you do it such that your kids don't have anything to heal from? I mean, they will have things to heal from because every human does, right?
Yes.
But like, how do you minimize that?
That's so funny. So I knew a therapist once who had a pillow on their couch that said, if it's not one thing, it's your mother.
Oh!
And it's funny because it's true, right? Like my kids have 2 of those, and you know, we will harm them in ways that we have no idea we're even doing, obviously, because then we wouldn't do it. So I think all the time about, not all the time, I was actually just thinking this morning about, you know, what are Bobby and Shia going to need to heal from that we did? And all we can do is say, I'm so sorry. I was doing the best I can, but I hear you. And now that I know better, I will do better. So yeah, conflict is like, happens all the time. We get angry at each other. We snap at each other. We get offended by each other.
Yeah.
And then we try to step it back. So, you know, being mindful doesn't mean that you're perfect. And it also doesn't mean that you're always in your practice. You're still always human. You're just a little bit better than you were yesterday, you know, and the next day. And so, and I don't even want to say better because that's really putting like a value judgment on it. You're just more skillful. And what I mean by that is just causing less hurt. But I'm sure there are things that I do. I mean, I have all my stuff that I'm still, you know, healing is like an everyday practice that I try really hard not to put on my kids. But I'm sure I do it in ways that I just am not even recognizing.
Yeah. I do think sometimes when people hear wellness, they assume that the folks in it are like kind of one hyper wealthy, hyper white, hyper beautiful, and hyper perfect. But beyond those assumptions, that like y'all must be different from us. Like y'all don't mess up like we mess up. You know what I mean? So it's good to hear. It's good to hear that y'all still do snap at each other and say things you maybe shouldn't have said even if you meant them, and then also say things you don't mean. And then it's just the process of walking it back and talking it out, you know?
I think that the way that Erin and I, if you think, okay, I've seen this diagram once before, and we don't have a whiteboard or anything, but like if you think of a flower with petals.
Sure.
And like each petal is sort of getting mad and then coming back. All right, I'm going to say this out. I'm going to extrovert to you, and then I'll see if this makes sense. Okay, so you imagine like all of your petals, you get mad, you come back, you get mad, you make up, whatever. With my mindfulness practice, it's helped me to get mad less often and come back to making up a lot quicker. So instead of having these petals that are like this, I have these petals that are like this, more like a 4-leaf clover than like a daisy.
Right. Now that makes total sense. You made total sense.
Okay.
Yeah. That's really clever. Do the kids know? Do the kids know that image?
No. So I actually have never used it in that context before this conversation, but it's used as a mindfulness tool when your mind wanders. You know, your brain's job is to generate thoughts, and people think that when you're practicing meditation, you're supposed to just have a blank mind. And they're like, well, I'm having all these thoughts. I have too many thoughts. Meditation is not for me.
Yeah.
And so I think what's important to share is that that's just your brain doing its job. We're not trying to stop its brain from doing its job. We're just trying to be aware of what's happening. And so you use your breath as an anchor. You can use other things as an anchor too. You can use sensations, or you can use music, or you can use other sounds, or taste. Movement, but most often we talk about the breath. That's free. It's always with you. Your body's going to breathe you, whether you're aware of it or not.
Yes.
So we talk about sort of the mind, like here's that daisy again, right? The mind, you're like in meditation, and then the mind starts to wander about your grocery list or whatever, but then you bring it back.
Yeah.
That is success. People think that's failure, but that is success because you recognized your mind was wandering and you brought it back to your breath.
What is this thing though?
This is just the middle of the daisy.
Right, but like what is it in meditation?
I would say the breath.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's awareness of your breath. It's a concentration on your breath. So yeah, so your mind wanders, you bring it back. Your mind wanders, you bring it back. Your mind wanders, you bring it back. And as you practice, your mind wanders less and you're able to bring it back quicker. So your petals get shorter and wider instead of this.
Right.
So that's what a practice does for you.
Yeah. I guess we haven't really talked to someone specifically about meditation. And I think, so in almost every episode, I find out that going to school for theater is just going to school for wellness. And we can do it in a really unhealthy way, but I learned all of this, like breath work and ritual work, all of it's theater. So we focus on our breath a lot, but I wouldn't call it meditation. You know what I mean? But like for my final exam in one of my breathwork classes, it was truly just breathing for 45 minutes in a series. And that's what we did, was breathe in the series for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It's silly. It's silly, silly, silly. But I don't think that's meditation. I don't know why. Can you clarify? Like, because when I think of meditation, I don't think of, that was work. The breathing that I did in theater school was work. It was intended to enhance this thing that carries me around and this thing that comes out of me, right?
Yeah.
So we focus on our breath because breath is the only truth, and then we speak truth, right? I don't imagine that meditation is that way. Aren't you like saying something inside your brain like, I am whole or something? Like, I don't know. What are you doing in there?
You could.
Yeah.
There's a million ways to meditate. I would say, find the one that works right for you. But I'll tell you what.
Okay, works for
in
you.
my mind.
What's this for you?
Okay. So in my mind, mindfulness in general is, I would describe it as just anchoring yourself to the present moment without judgment. That's the hardest part, at least for me.
Yeah.
So, anchoring yourself to the present moment can take lots of different forms.
Sure.
I think of mindfulness as something that's like every second of every minute of every day.
Sure.
And meditation is the formal practice of mindfulness. So meditation is where a lot of the work happens. But mindfulness is sort of a lens that you bring to the world. And there's a lot of concepts that would go along with mindfulness that aren't necessarily coming to you from the chair or the cushion or wherever it is that you're sitting. So meditation for me is just a formal practice of mindfulness.
Sure.
And I would describe it in, concentration practices and awareness practices and loving kindness are sort of the three mindfulness practices that work for me. But again, like my overarching view is the practice that works for you,
right, is
the right practice, right? So if it's pulling muck out of the creek and putting it on the banks, that's the practice for you.
That's the practice for you.
For me, I think of meditation as a really important part of my overall hygiene. I think that in the future, mindfulness is making this huge sort of splash and then everywhere right now, and I think that's because there's so much neuroscience coming out about it, and that I think that's just going to keep going, and that in the future we're going to look at meditation as the same importance as brushing our teeth. We brush our teeth twice a day. It usually takes 2 minutes. I think you could apply a mindfulness practice for 2 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes in the evening and still get benefit from it. But again, I think it's also just dependent. So, you'll see more of a difference the more that you practice. Right. I usually practice for about 5 minutes a day. That's really what I can get in. But then 3 times a year, I'll take an 8-week class where I'm practicing, for long periods of time with a group that holds me accountable. And so that really gives me sort of a boost. And then my little daily practice sustains me until I get another boost. But for me and the way that my brain works, I work best with a teacher. And it makes a huge difference for me to have a good teacher than just to try to do it on my own with an app. I think some people work fine with an app, and there are a lot of other ways that you can access meditations, especially right now. But that's what works for me. I oftentimes do something guided. So you said, do you say these words in your head? Sometimes. Okay. I do. Sometimes I'm just focusing on the feel of my breath at my nose. And sometimes I'm just focusing on my diaphragm, moving my belly out and in. And I like that practice because it gives me that awareness of my body and that connection to my body that is so easy for me to forget just because of my upbringing. I don't ever want to forget that I'm a whole person and not just a body that drags a brain around.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do something called a gatsa, which is like a meditation poem.
Cool.
So it's, you could do something like, I am breathing in, I am breathing out.
Yeah.
I am smiling, I am calm. This is a present moment. I know this is a precious moment. And that's it. And then if I ground myself on those words, then, it's a different kind of meditation.
Wow.
Yeah, well, yeah.
No, that's actually helpful, though. I do think there's like some mystification around what meditation actually is.
Yeah.
So to know that whatever works for you kind of is that.
Yes. There are so many. Yes. I think there are a lot of misunderstandings about, you have to have a cushion and you usually sit, with your hands in a mudra. And yeah. So, I always meditate in my chair. I usually have my hands like this or sometimes like this. I like to think of my feet as two prongs of a plug, sort of plugged into the earth, no matter the beautiful rug or the carpet or the linoleum underneath. I just think of my feet as plugging into the earth, and it reminds me that I am part of something that is so much bigger than me.
Yeah.
And that my problems, while they might feel big in my head, are not that big in the overall scheme of things, and that helps.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for explaining your personal practice. That takes courage, and I appreciate your willingness. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking.
Of course. So we both extroverted at each other for about 45 minutes, which means we need to talk about what's coming up next at the Innerwork Center.
Yeah.
So what do you want folks to know about? What's going on?
Yeah. So the best way to find out about our programs is to go to our website. So that's innerworkcenter.org.
Sure.
And click on programs.
Sure.
And there's a ton of free practices on there too that you can do at home. But like I said, come and experience a class with a teacher and see what an amazing difference that makes. I think our teachers are absolutely incredible. And I know that I'm partial, but I've actually now been in my role, around the country looking at different meditation programs. And I still come back to our teachers and think so highly of them. Yeah. And I think they're just some of the best teachers I've ever had. And there's really what we're trying to do is put tools in your toolbox. Yeah. And some will be for you and some will not be for you. And you pass on those. But you are going to be spiritual in a way that is just you and just unique to you. You don't need a framework. You can build your own framework. You have personal authority to do that. Yeah. So come and learn some tools. So one that I definitely want to share with your audience is a keynote that we have coming up.
Sure.
So we've been doing these 4 times a year.
Okay. It's
our opportunity to bring someone from out of town to share with Richmonders what we might not get from our local folks. And perspective. So you're usually authors or someone who's writing on some science that they conducted. We just had Barbara Fredrickson who talked about love as these microseconds of connection between human beings. Yeah. Probably with animals too. So our next keynote is August 5th. Okay. It's from 7 to 9. It's going to be on Zoom. Oh, cool. And it's with Dr. Catherine Sanderson, who is known as, her nickname is sort of the Professor of Happiness, but she's coming to talk to us about resiliency.
Good.
And the power the science of resilience. So how to thrive even during challenging times, which we kind of all are going through right now.
What? It's challenging right now?
So we try to keep it pretty urgent and relevant in terms of our topics. And so she's going to share the science, her research behind who's thriving right now and what can we learn from them to bring directly back to our lives. Yeah. So that's a really easy way to dip your toe in the Innerwork Center programs. We also have drop-in practice groups. So we have journaling, we have meditation groups that meet Wednesday and Friday mornings. We have soul collage, which is a more creative way of looking at your inner life. We have a queer Richmond song community that meets once a month. So try to meet the needs of a diverse group of people because inner work is for everyone.
Yeah. And then my favorite question that I get to ask y'all always is, what is one nugget that I can take to my neighbors, both metaphorical and literal, that can improve our lives and communities today?
Forgiveness maybe is my favorite that I would share, which is the hardest thing of all, I think. And there are a lot of tools that you can learn that will help you forgive both yourselves and other people. Yeah. I also think that stories, our own stories, are medicine. And that's why I love doing things like this. I think we owe it to each other and to our ancestors and to our kids to share our stories and to heal.
Sure. Wow. Thank you. Yeah. One of my favorite quotes in the world, and I want to attribute it to Mark Twain, but it could be wrong, is forgiveness is the scent of lavender on the boot that crushed it. I think it took me a long time, and that quote was a thing that made me realize that forgiveness is for the forgiver and not for the forgiven.
Absolutely.
One of my favorite quotes ever.
That's a good one.
So if I want to find you, I type in Innerwork Center into Google and it will bring you up.
Yep. It'll bring us up. Yep. We do all the Google, SEO, whatever. Yes. Pay all the people to make us come up. So yes, if you Google Innerwork Center, we will come up.
Wonderful.
But it's a .org.
It's a .org. Innerworkcenter.org. Go take a class. I hear they're on Zoom these days.
Yes.
So maybe anyone's invited. Or drop in, or all of the things.
Yeah. And I'll see you there.
Yes. Yeah. The most extroverted person in the front. It was very cool to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. I loved every second of it.
Yay.